James, welcome to the Built Different podcast. It's great to have you on, mate. How are you today?
Very good, very good. It's early in the UK, but it's I'm an early bird, so it's good.
What time is it back in the UK at the moment?
We're just before 9, yeah. So people
Oh,
coming
yeah.
in the office and the world waking up.
Yeah, I've got the benefit of being at the moment 3 hours ahead of you guys, and yeah, I've managed to get some steps in, have a meeting with a client. But to be fair, I'm running out of gas already, so that's the challenge.
Coffee, coffee, coffee.
Yes, well, that's the other thing. I think I've had three double espressos already today. I do cap my coffee at 2 o'clock max, and then nothing after that. James, it's great to have you on. The reason I wanted you on, I've had some accountants and financial experts, CFOs, on my podcast in the past, and I always really enjoy these conversations. With my background in business investing, business turnarounds, like you, I speak to a lot of business owners, and I do find there's a lot of common themes with business owners in terms of the struggles they have, the challenges they have in business, and a lot of it stems from lack of knowledge or education, sometimes ignorance to the numbers. And I know that that's something that I'm sure you come across quite often. So we've got a few things that I wanted to run through today, and I know the audience will get a lot of value from this conversation. But before we start, if you could give me a little bit of an introduction into yourself, why you got into the accounting space, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, no, I mean my background's a bit patchy. To go through it really quickly is that when I finished college at 18, I was like, I'm not going to uni because that was a waste of money. 2 years later, working for Aviva, was teaching someone who was earning double my money, had been to uni, how to do the job. So at that point, I packed up and went to uni. So I went a bit older. I went there a bit older, came out and just looked for a graduate job. And got a job with a company called Carillion. They're now bust. They're a bit like Balfour Beatty. They did hospital builds and a lot of the private builds when private enterprise builds with Labour. And how I got into accounting is literally I turned up at a job site and I said, I'm the business graduate. Hello. And they went, you're sitting in the corner with the accountant. You're going to work with him. And that's pretty much how accountancy chose me.
Yeah.
And the check-in past after that is I worked there for a few years working on a contract, learning accountancy, doing some exams. I then, motivated by money, like most of us at the early mid-20s, and I went and worked in investment banks in London. So I did Lehman's, Nomura, and JP Morgan, qualifying as a SEMA qualified accountant during that period, working in various roles, including sort of in treasury, which is really interesting, sort of the bank, which is really interesting. And then I basically, my son went to school at 6 years old, and we found childcare really challenging. So I became a house husband, and I was probably one of the first full-time male husbands to stay at home, and wasn't totally welcomed at the school gates to the coffee mornings and the gym sessions and all of that. So I had to fill my day because, you did have a few hours during the day when I wasn't doing all house husband jobs. And I accidentally fell into starting an accounting practice, just to really keep me busy. I did a few people's, and then, that was sort of 10 years ago. And over time, the businesses have grown and have needed more help. So I've hired people, and that's where we are today with a team of 5 of us servicing 70 plus limited companies, is our main focus. We do look after sole traders and individuals, but our primary focus is supporting businesses, limited companies, and supporting them with growth through educating about their numbers, not being naive, as you said, around their numbers, and making them challenge us and understand what's going on in their business from the numbers. And we'll get into that a bit more around sort of some of the challenges we've seen and stuff. But that's the potted history of how JBen Finance became and is today. And we're on a very good growth trajectory at the moment, seeing numbers of people coming to us because of the way we do things.
Yeah, and I can see that from online, the videos you put out there, the website you've got, the LinkedIn profile and stuff. So I can see that, unlike a lot of other accountants who, accountancy can sometimes have this, I don't know, negative slant on it from some people, because when I speak to business owners, whether I'm trying to help them grow their business or buy their business or help them turn around their business, one of the most common things that they say is that my accountant is not very good. I hear from them at the end of the year to do my year-end accounts. I then get a big corporation tax bill that I wasn't expecting, and I just don't like my accountant, blah, blah, blah. And I wonder how much of that is down to both the client and also the accountant.
Yeah.
You know, but I can see from what you do that you take a lot more to do with the client and to understand their business a bit more.
Absolutely. There's a fine line between anything, and I think in the past, accountancy has been deemed dull and boring and not that exciting. And I think accountants haven't helped that because of the type of person it attracts, and then how they deliver stuff, which traditionally you do the year-end accounts. You'd go and say, here's your corp tax bill and here's my bill. So you've gone, here, have this S sandwich and then have a bit of S on top of it from me, right? And I just don't think people just don't want that. And I know I mentioned when we were off camera, I had a client yesterday that's exactly what they said. They did their tax return for them. They questioned the tax return and went through the items on there with them. They reduced it and went, oh yeah, okay, we understand that now. So they reduced the tax bill by $2,000 and then charged them £600 for the privilege of the client correcting it.
Yeah.
For me, that's not customer service. That's really poor. That's like that's just, and you don't, and as the accountant, you don't think that's like off, that you've done a piece of work, you've done it incorrectly, and then you've charged again for the privilege of getting it right. If you haven't asked the right questions at the start, then that's on you as the accountant, because you are the expert in the field.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there is this big thing in accountancy and sort of a lot of areas where it's scope creep. So we will quote for business and we will put a proposal in place, and then it's can you just?
Yeah.
And that's a real hard fine line, because accountants tend to be helpers naturally, and it's a real hard fine line to try and manage what is in and what is out of scope, and you can start something and then get in deep and go, actually we can't do this. So that's one of the biggest challenges, and that's where I think accountants get themselves in trouble as well, and clients do the same. I had a client recently, again around his VAT return, where I'm ringing him the day before the VAT return saying, where are all your invoices? And him telling me, I haven't got time to look at emails, I haven't got time to do this, I haven't got time for this. And I'm like, well, we've communicated with you on 5 or 6 occasions over the last 6 weeks, and we're not, it's your job to get us that stuff. It's not ours. So there is, you do have to be quite hard in some cases with clients, but but it's a flip on both, I think, in some ways. And I think the type of person that naturally went into accounting 20 years ago, didn't help themselves. But there's certainly a great crop of new accountants out there that are, I'm not alone in how I approach stuff and how we do it. And I'm learning off them as well, off those guys that are out in the forefront too. And, I would pledge everyone to go and talk to a number of accountants. If you're only being spoke to once a year and only getting a corp tax return and very little input, go find some local accountants to you and go and talk to 3 or 4 or 5 of them, because they can be invaluable to your business. And we've got examples of what we've done with clients that have come on board, left, right, and centre.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You're right to say there's a new wave of people coming through that are a bit more in the 21st century now. Yeah. And, just a quick story about my first business that I started, 2018 it was. The first year I made a profit, and the corporation tax bill that the accountant was looking for me to pay, again year end, and didn't hear from them all year, was £21,500. And then I was like, there's no way, can't be that. So I looked at what they'd actually used, and they'd actually used, they'd instead of using a 12-month period, they actually used like I don't know how they managed it, like a 16 or 17-month period for that accounting year. And I was like, well, that's not the accounting year we're looking for here. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise that. And that got shrank to like £5,000. I'm like, how many people does that happen to in your practice alone, that they don't realize that's a mistake? They end up paying more, they get resentful, they then go to someone else. Yeah, it was just a mess. So yeah, it happens a lot.
And I think that comes back to many business owners, right? When we see new startups, we'll have frank conversations with them, and you're walking into having two jobs now, right? And they're like, what do you mean? I go, well, you've got the job that you're going to deliver, so that job you enjoy, or that job that you're good at, or what your thing. So, it might be, cake making, right? You love cake making, that's your job. You've also got a second job, which is running a business. And they're like, what do you mean? And you're like, well, you are HR, you are marketing, sales, finance, and admin. And you're like, so, when are you going to do that? And again, you can have clients come on where the guy said to me, I'm going to do all my admin on Friday. I'm having Friday off. I'm not going to work on Friday. I'm going to do admin on Friday. And I went, the best will in the world, if someone offers you a contract and, £30,000 over 6 months to work, you will work on Friday and you won't do your admin. No, I won't. I go, you will, because I'm a business owner like you. If money's on the table, you're going to take it. Yep. Because you don't know where the next one's coming from, or so the best will in the world, you just let us do, and I was pitching my services saying we'll do everything for you, and he's going, no, I'll do my own bookkeeping, I'll do this. And I was like, okay, then crack on. You're not my client, right? And that's important. From like another thing that you can think about from business owners, that every client that comes across, or potential client that comes across your front door, isn't necessarily a client that you want to take on or you want to be with, right? And that's a hard lesson to learn. When you start out, you want every client, but actually not every client is right for you. And you've got to make sure that especially if you're in the service industry where you're working with them a long time. So if you're in the marketing or consulting, or where it's not a in and out product, you want to make sure they're the right people. You're both on the same wavelength and the right people.
Yeah, that's a great point, because like similar to yourself, I've taken on clients in the past that I really shouldn't have, and your gut is like almost honed over time, and sometimes you don't listen to it, even though it's telling you don't do it. But you do take on the client, you realise that they don't pay enough for the troubles they're giving you and the headaches they're giving you, and there is that balance, of course. So when you were growing your business, and I know you've got a good team and stuff around you and you're forward thinking, but what were the challenges for you? Obviously I know you started the business and the house effectively. And
exactly. Yeah.
So I guess have long-term, plans to grow it, but it kind of grew and grew.
Yeah, no, I think, I started it as just to fill the time, and sort of as my boy got towards the end of primary school, he didn't want you as much or need you as much, and more time came available. So I'd take, someone would like go, oh, they're quite good, you should go, and I'd do that. And then it really got to a head when he went to high school, and it was like, right, do I go get a job locally and still do the school run bits and be there, or do I grow this? And it coincided, looking back, with the underlying clients just getting too big for me to do on my own. Mm-hmm. So I needed an employee. Like you said, I was doing it from home. Do I want that employee in my home? Not really. And then luckily I found, where my client had his main office, he had it's a serviced office accommodation, and an office came up relatively cheap. He wanted half of it. He said, well, we'll go halves for a little while and then you can kick me out. And that's what really happened. So I got a cheap office and I got an employee. And we sort of went from there. And I think the big, again, it's another nuance with business owners, right? Especially sole director businesses, that scaredness or that reluctance to employ someone, right? Oh, I don't want to take that on. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And you're like, okay, I hear the reasons why all the time, but I'll counter in that person who's on contract only, right, can just do one. Yeah. And you're giving them all tacit knowledge of your business, and do they feel like a valued employee if they just have to invoice you every month? And two, are you really building a business, or are you just creating a profitable job? And that's what you're really creating. So what is your goal going to be? You can't avoid employing people forever, and running a payroll focuses the mind on getting enough money in to pay everyone, right? Yeah. So it gives you a different mindset on that person or that team member to because they're part of you. So I find it quite funny when people don't want to employ people, but I guess it's that reluctance and that scaredness of thinking of all the HR and all the issues that they're going to be. But I can say that, if you employ well, and it's not just rush employ my best mate's mum or my best mate's daughter or whatever. If you employ well and you do your right research and you go through the right recruitment process, you will get the right person. And the team here is great. And I won't hide from it that my employee, to fit around my life, my employment times were like 9:30 to 2:30. So I got school mums, who love talking to clients, pick up the phone, nothing against Gen Z, but I've had conversations with Gen Z that go like, you need to ring them, and they're like, what? Speak to someone? No, but they're conscientious, they care, I'm always telling them like their reply to emails on their days off because they're part-time, and I'm like, don't worry, that's my problem, not yours. But they've got a bond with those clients, and that you cannot buy that, right? That is unbelievable to have that link with your clients, and that stops that. I never hear from my client, never proactive, right? Not this, and that's where we, where we're really, we push on that side of things with us. So I think, that they're the interesting challenges we see with, the business owners when they sort of get to that point of hiring someone or not hiring one. And that also has, tax implications by not hiring or hiring, right? Yeah. Because we were talking to a client yesterday who's like, I want to pay less tax. And we're like, we need to hire someone because then you'll get employment allowance and you can put your salary up and it'll cost you less. Oh, I don't want the headache of that. Okay, then that's you're asking me for my advice. Here's what we're seeing a lot of clients do: hire someone, which then gives you a better tax position for salary and dividends because of the way the tax structure is right this minute.
The tax thing is it's obviously a sore point right now because it feels worse than it ever has done, and to be frank, it's one of the reasons I left. But at the same time, it is the system, and you kind of just need to manipulate it in a way that's legal, and you're in the parameters they set. But yeah, a lot of people fund it, like when small business owners look at the accounts, they judge it through. A lot of them judge it through the lens of how much tax am I paying, and that's the lens they look through quite often. And again, it's an education thing. Like, so going back to the education piece, we don't get taught this stuff in school. Probably by design. Let's be honest. I mean, people coming through anyone can start a business. I think it costs is it 12 quid on Company's House to start a business?
I think it's up to 35 now. They had a big old increase in fees across the board. So, but I mean, it is getting harder because you didn't even have to verify who you were. You could open a limited company and you didn't even have to, you could put whatever details you wanted in, really. I mean, I guess if you went to Company's House and looked up Mickey Mouse, I reckon he's got loads of companies, right? Yeah. Genuinely, because, there's a big push in the next 2 months where you've got to verify yourself. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting after sort of in December to see how many businesses haven't been verified because they're just going to suddenly, the only reason you wouldn't verify yourself is if you didn't want to. Yep. Or you can't. So it'd be interesting to see how many of the thousands and thousands of limited companies out there aren't verified because they probably can't be verified. But that'd be an interesting stat coming up. But on the education piece, I think it's quite funny. I did see a post about someone put into AI, how would you create a system, like a structure and a system? Have you seen this?
I haven't, but I think I know what you're going to say.
A system and a structure to keep individuals oppressed and in a controlled environment, and it went through basically how the world is set up. So you go for education, you're focused on results and things and not creativity and rules and regulations and everything, and it basically just said how the whole world's set up, and you're like, oh my god, so it is that. And you're right, you're not taught enough finances. I mean, compound interest, right, is an amazing thing if you get it. And we spent, one of my biggest clients, I've spent probably 5 years doing CFO work for him. Mm-hmm. And over that 5 years, we both learned a lot in business. We've gone through loads of stuff that we've never touched on before. But he is now comfortable sitting in a meeting doing a deal, working out rough numbers and saying, I think the numbers are around here and this is what I want, and we'll check it. But, whereas actually he would have just gone, I need you to do all the numbers, James, and can you before? And that education then gives him so much power when he's in the room, to understand back a fag, packet calcs on HR, how much it's going to cost, all of this thing. And I know not every business owner can afford to employ, an accountant at 700 quid a day or whatever to be there for them. But certainly finding one that you can engage with and maybe, pay that little bit more a month to have that little bit more access to float ideas off or keep you on the straight and narrow means you don't get massive tax bills or you don't get massive surprises. Yep. Because that's the worst thing you can have is a horrible surprise, right? And that's the worst thing that we don't want to deliver that if it feels like I'm delivering a surprise, I haven't done my job properly is kind of how I
because you're communicating all the way through the journey. And business owners that I speak to, I would say, honestly, I don't know the exact number. I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of business owners over the last few years, as I mentioned, for different reasons. But I would have to say at least 8 out of 10 of those businesses, and I'm talking small businesses all the way up to multi-million pound businesses, they 8 out of 10 of them don't track cash. They don't understand the numbers. Quite often, one of the things that I help people with is a turnaround strategy, like restructuring the business and stuff. And quite often those guys never track cash, but what they do in that process is they don't track cash. The cash flow, the business starts getting tight. They struggle to pay suppliers. They can't keep up with payroll. Sometimes they're not paying themselves. And then they go and get what's deemed the easy option, which is one of these really high interest cash flow loans. And it's like, when that money lands on that day, it's like, oh, thank God, that's amazing.
But it's a sticky plaster. You've found a solution to the problem. You haven't created the problem. You haven't fixed the problem, right? You've just got a sticky plaster over it. And yeah, we've seen that 26.9% APR on a loan. You're just like, you're not helping yourself here, right? You've actually, like a client, you've actually got 90 grand in accounts receivable, and you've gone and got a loan for 10 grand.
Yeah,
go squeeze them people to pay you.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know that. Well, no, you didn't know that because you're not asking for our support. You're not paying for that support. And guess what? The support that you would have paid for would have been less than the interest you're paying on that loan.
Oh yeah.
But the other thing, you said they don't track cash. I find it's either one or the other. They don't track cash or they run their business from their bank account, which is a really bad idea because cash is so, because obviously cash flow is very different to profit.
Yeah.
So you've got 10 grand in the bank, but actually you've got a VAT bill next week, right?
Yes.
And
profitable businesses. You've seen this. It's in the news all the time. Like big profitable businesses can go under because they don't have a cash flow in place.
Yeah. So talking about, so we spend time with clients if they want talking around how those statements work and how they interact, and no one gets it first time. We spent 5+ years studying and and you still don't get it until you really, till you're working in it all the time and seeing the numbers, but sort of how an invoice, follow an invoice through of how it comes into your business and what happens to the VAT and where that goes. And, and using terminology that people understand, like, the VAT bucket, right? We put all the VAT you've paid in one bucket and we put all you've generated and then we shake it out and you get a number at the bottom. Just making the language, business owner language, or making it sensible that they can understand. And that's where we've really won, and that's where we've seen the best answers. I mean, we had a lady who's in the marketing space came and sort of joined our accountability program. So we run a program of 12-month program, 1 month and 1 meeting a month, where we just make them accountable. So we talk about sort of these urgent and important tasks, or the important and non-urgent tasks. So most business owners get stuck in that box of important and urgent, client shouting, bills to pay, staff to deal with, work to sort out, work to be done, right? Really important stuff, very urgent, get it. But those important non-urgent tasks are the ones that move the dial on the business. They're the ones that am I going to sit down and ring up 10 people for new business?
Yeah.
It's important. I know it's important. But for me, I've got to get this guy that's shouting at me off the thing. But if I rang those 10 people, I'd get more revenue and I wouldn't need that person. I could sack that client because I've got 10 more over here, right? So we sit there just as an accountability partner, 1 hour a month, and we literally build a, because again, the business owner in most cases knows what's wrong with his business.
Yep.
And he knows what he needs to do to get, or he, I say he, I should be better, he or she knows what they need to do to fix it as well. Right? Yep. But they never really sit down and think about it. So first meeting, we'll sit down, we'll talk around the challenges they're seeing in their business. We'll add in anything we've seen from our, macro environment or other businesses we've got. And then we'll list out those challenges and the solutions. And we'll go, okay, which are the best ones? And which ones can you do in a month? Mm-hmm. And we go, okay, and they agree. And we don't tend to do anything other than go, we'll see in a month and see when they're done. And suddenly over that 12 months, it's immense, the progress they make. And we had the first meeting we had with one lady, she was talking through her business, and right at the end, she said, yeah, and my biggest client, I just don't charge them the same, my standard hourly rate. And we're like, why? Well, they're my biggest client and I bill them lots anyway. So is your work less important for them than it is for your other clients? No. Okay, so why wouldn't you charge the same? And she was like, I don't know. And you're like, so what would happen if you did charge it right? And she went, I don't know. I go, well, you got two ways, conversation with them or just whack the bill in. And we went with whack the bill in, and they just paid it.
Yeah, because they value our services.
Yeah. So over the course of the year, that was £12,000 recurring of extra revenue, and she'd done no more work. She just charged her rate, her worth, and that's 12,000 to the bottom line. That's profit for her. So it's £1,000 a month before tax that she's found in the business that she can now either invest and grow or take out as money on herself. And that was one meeting, just where a bit of common sense and a bit of questioning and challenging, and accountability. And I find it fascinating when I sit in these conversations with people and you just ask them and they're like, oh, yeah, I don't know. And I'm guilty of it too. I sit there, look, sometimes I have to take a seat back and go, what about me? And what about my business? Because we're small businesses as well as accounting practices. We don't get it all right. So that, it's amazing. So that education is a key part of what we try to do and educate people in that finances stuff and challenge us. I would do it.
And the client that just when you're talking about tax and stuff and VAT, we had a client that I was chatting to yesterday or 2 days ago, and he had a fairly big VAT bill in PAYE. I think it came to like 62,000, so it was one of the biggest ones he's had. But he didn't have the cash for it, and he was panicking big time. And I said, well, so he's only started with us a month ago. And I said, well, there's an easy solution to this. What's that? Call HMRC and have a conversation with them and map out what you can afford to pay over a period of time. Now, he actually got that over a 3-year payment plan.
Yeah,
which you can do. People don't realise that all HMRC want is they want, if you're struggling for whatever reason, they want you to engage with them, communicate, and collaborate with them, and they'll do that.
I mean, it is no advantage that when you hear it's mostly football clubs in the news where HMRC is petitioning a wind up. Yeah. It is the last resort for HMRC to wind up your company because they get nothing.
Correct.
They want you to trade out, and again, we've done that with a number of clients as well. We would, 3 years seems, it seems a long time because I'd want to be as aggressive as I can because otherwise you're just paying it forever, right? Yeah. And you're only just adding extra cash outflows and challenges. But yeah, HMRC will always speak to you if you can't make a bill. And again, that we've got clients again that we provide sort of updates on their tax positions on a running basis so they can put the money away because they're that scared of it. Yeah. We're like, that's fine. It's a bit of time for us. We build it into your bill, but you can have that. You can have that security. We can give you that security. But as with everything, it comes as a small charge. Yeah. But you can have it, and we can do it for you. And that's that's kind of where we're. I was watching a presentation by another accountant, and she was like, I service like sole traders and the things. I am an accountant that doesn't cuddle. They don't want cuddles. My plumber doesn't want to know how I fix. I don't want to know how my plumber fixes my radiator. He doesn't want to know how I do my things. And I went, well, that's interesting. I'll be an accountant that cuddles, right?
Yeah,
That's where we sit. That's our marketplace. We will be there for our client. We will answer the questions. We will try and help them through their challenges, whether it's tax, finance, or outside. And we've got some great suppliers around us in the HR space, in the IT space, marketing space. All of it is that we can refer into and they, and then collaborate, right? And we can say, right, this is what they're trying to achieve. This is all the background on them. This is the stuff that I've seen. This is the stuff that they might tell you, and go from there. So we try to provide a bit more all-round service, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, totally. And I saw on your website, for example, that you kind of frame it and position yourself as your finance partner, effectively, which is important, because it needs to be a collaborative approach, because people don't understand the numbers. They want to rely on you as the advisor to coach them through that. So yeah, I totally get that. One of the other things that I kind of wanted to touch on with you, James, was the future, right? So it's impossible to ignore right now AI. It's everywhere. It's on LinkedIn. It's on social media. People are dabbling with it. People are using it. How do you see the accountancy world with AI? Is it going to disrupt it? Is it already disrupting it? How do you see AI being integrated as we move forward in the accountancy space?
Yeah, look, I think it's gonna revolutionise many industries, and as humans, we're not the best at accepting change, but you have to embrace it as best you can. I do find it frustrating when software providers go, we've got our AI thing, AI is embedded, it does this, and really it's just a chatbot. That's just cheap, right? That's just you whacking out something so you can charge me a bit more. AI will be embedded in processes, right? And if you think your processes work now, you'll be building a new process if you really want to get the best out of AI. In accountancy, I still think there's a challenge in that we're seeing people come that they want to speak to an accountant. Yes. It's still a humanized business. As much as we said at the start that some of the humans are a bit robotic, people still want that robotic human to a certain extent to moan at their tax bill or whatever. And even the best AI in the world, we've got bots that that search just the Gov website, right, to give us because if you know anything about accountancy, there's a Tolley's handbook and it's about 1 billion pages long, right? You can't know everything as an accountant, but we've got an AI that searches just HMRC's website and it gets it wrong. It pulls the wrong rates because there's old rates on there, and you go back and challenge it and it goes, no, this is right, and you go, give me the URL. You go, yeah, that's the wrong URL, you should have been using. Oh yeah, you're right. So those people who go, oh, I want to write a contract or I'm going to do my accounts off AI, you can't trust it. It will not be right. There's potential for it to be wrong, and no one's going to, HMRC aren't going to go, oh well, that's not your fault. That's AI's fault. That you are the responsible. So, but it has a place in automating tasks, and at the moment, where obviously it's really strong, is a certain element of creativity, right? So where we would sit there as that business advisor or that support person to go, here's some ideas, right? Or we need to do a SWOT analysis, or we need to do a pestle analysis or something. That is vast, right? So you can feed in loads of information and then you can get a really big assessment and pestle analysis, which you wouldn't as an individual would have spent hours and hours and hours going through trying to think of all these bits. That will dump it to you quick and then you can go a bit thick. So I find that really useful. And then on the other side, analyzing of data. So you might chuck, a P&L in or certain things in and stuff like that. And that can then also look at it from that side and do some critical analytics. Again, ask it to do maths. Yeah. It can get it wrong, give it a Excel file over a CSV, it struggle, so it's still not perfect. You've still got to sense check it, but it can speed up processes and give you wider things. And then the other bit that I found it really useful is if I'm jumping on a client call, like a discovery call with a potential new client, what I found is that I will put in like their name, their date of birth, their company name, and we'll do a deep search across that, and it'll give me 8 to 10 pages of information on that business already.
Yep.
So I can jump on that call already having a decent review of their business, and that review would have took time to do, right? Because it's searched for all their LinkedIn, their Facebooks, their Instagrams. It's pulled out key numbers and talking points, challenges for that industry, etc., which gives me a starting point to go through, highlight, and gives me a starting point when I get on the call with them to talk around their business and stuff. So AI will come into every business. It will, and as it gets better and better and better, it will improve processes and systems. I still think in every industry there's an element of people want people, right?
Agreed.
Driverless cars, people still want to get, yes, there's a novelty to it, but I still think they want someone there, right? They still have people. There's still people on the DLR that they still have people standing on the DLR, don't they?
Yep.
That drives itself, but they still got people there.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think that the AI agents on their own are good, but it's how you join them up all together in a process, as you mentioned. But at the end of that process, or somewhere in the process, whether it's a sales prospect, a customer, a client, whatever, they do want some kind of human interaction, because we're a species where we want communication, we want that community aspect, but businesses like yours that are embracing things like that will definitely see bigger results than those.
I mean, in the industry, and I'm speaking because I'm looking at purchasing other practices. There are practices in this industry that are still working paper based. They're not even on the cloud software. Yes. So if you're not even on cloud software, how are you going to embrace AI? Exactly. Because you're not even accepting the fact that cloud accountancy software to automate stuff in just capturing bank statements and expenses and all of this exist, really. I mean, you're almost 2 generations behind, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's facing the industry, really, in some instances. And that circles back right to where we started in how our accountants interact with you can tell you how they're operating, right? We're on zero. All our clients are on zero. They've all got access to zero. They can all go. We show them how to run reports. They can go in and get their live data pretty much, and challenge it and question stuff, which they do. And they should have that access. It shouldn't be a secret. It's their business, right?
Their numbers. Yep.
Their numbers, their business. And like you said, you didn't want a 21 grand corp tax surprise, but there's a lot of business owners out there that wouldn't have a clue and would just nod and accept it and say, oh yes, the accountant is right, the accountant is great. That shouldn't be the case. That's why I want to bring, I think there's a lot of accountants that sit sort of up here looking down, and it shouldn't be. It's an even playing field, right? The business owners we've got are experts in their field. Don't get me wrong, right? And I respect that. Right. And we do have conversations sometimes where they tell me about some of the accounting stuff or send me TikToks. And I go, do I tell you how to fix your truck? Do I send you TikToks about my truck, how to fix the truck? I don't, and don't believe everything you hear on TikTok, right?
Especially TikTok.
Exactly. But there has to be, you want to have that dialogue. I don't want them taking an action that costs them money. Mm-hmm. If they come to us and go, oh, I want to buy a car, I'm going to do this. And we go, whoa, let's have a quick think about this.
Yeah.
Let us have an hour doing some calcs for you. Cost you X, but at least guess what?
Informed at that point.
Yeah. So that's kind of So I think to sort of circle all the way back. The industry is changing. It needs to change. I think if you're watching this podcast as a business owner, and you are not seeing your accountant or speaking to your accountant on a quarterly basis or having better interactions, go and have some conversations with new ones, because we can help your business. We can help you understand your numbers, and it will accelerate your growth or hit your goals. 100%. Because all business coaching comes back to numbers at the end of the day. I speak to loads of business coaches all over the thing. And what do they talk about? What's your life goals? What's this? And what is your life goal? I want to make more money. So you've got to come back to numbers. So business owner, except you've got to come back to numbers. Find someone who's really good with numbers but can talk to you, right?
Yes,
exactly. That's my advice.
So, James, as we begin to wrap up, I think there was a lot of great insights in there. We could carry this conversation on for a lot longer. I can tell for sure. But if people want to reach out to you to become a client, and I know you don't take on anyone because you've already said that, it's got to be the right fit for you as well, but what's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah, so obviously our website, www.j-ben with 2 N's.co.uk, really accounting creative name, bearing in mind I'm James Bennett. You can find me on LinkedIn under James Bennett. I post weekly updates on what's going on at JBen Finance from all sorts of places, wherever I am at the time. We post insightful commentary and things like that. I am on all the other socials, but I don't really post there because I just don't have time because we're too busy helping our clients, right?
Totally. James, pleasure to have you on, mate. And we should probably do this again sometime soon in person.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
Oh, thank you.
Cheers, Steve.